Hey everyone, Pugs here with 2 new reviews for y'all. Today, I'm covering Survival of the Idiots and Dumped. And, I'm gonna just say it right now, this is gonna be quite the interesting review, because it's gonna be one of those ones where I love one of the episodes, but, not the other. And this time, I might even go so far as to say I actually dislike one of these episodes. And, I'm wondering, can you guys guess which one it is? It's gotta be obvious, right? I guess I'll just let you guys sit in suspense for a few more seconds while I finish up this intro, because obviously once I get to the actual episodes, I'll just reveal the answer. So, yeah. As always, I'll just say a quick thank you to everyone who's been watching, liking, and commenting. You guys know I love you guys. You guys are the best. And with all that out of the way, I'm just gonna get right into these reviews. Alright, let me go ahead and pop that suspense bubble right now, because I think that Survival of the Idiots is an excellent, hilarious episode. Really, I could just end the review right there, but obviously I'm gonna have a bit more to say than that. It's me after all, and I love to ramble. So, before I even get started with talking about the plot or the humor of this episode, I have to give it out to the animators and storyboarders here, because this episode is filled with both fluid animation and some great visuals. The first thing that comes to mind for the former is the very beginning of the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick are running to Sandy's house. It was just such a smooth segment, and also silly. But I just really loved that. And also, it's that segment is the base of those $5 footlong memes that I find way too funny for some reason. So I guess I'll link that in the description. Does it have a Know Your Meme page? I hope it does, because I'll link that if it does. Anyway, and onto the topic of visuals, we of course have Patrick's face when he's who you calling Pinhead? That's not the only good face in this episode. There's great shots like that all throughout the episode, the whole open sesame bit, or when Sandy's pissed off at the end of the episode. There's just all these nice visual touches in this episode that really elevate it. And speaking of Sandy, one thing I like about Survival of the Idiots is how it makes Sandy part of the gang. The entire plot of the episode is kickstarted by SpongeBob and Patrick aiming to hang out with her. They don't just accidentally run into her, they're specifically seeking her out. They're friends and they want to spend time with her, and I just like that. Maybe it's because, as I've been saying in these last few reviews, I'm on season 6, and this dynamic has been sorely lacking between SpongeBob and Sandy, and SpongeBob, Patrick and Sandy, just Sandy and everyone else, really. So I'm really latching on to it here. And the fact is, I like it, and it makes me happy. So, case closed. I also think it's great that Sandy knows SpongeBob, and to a lesser extent Patrick, well enough to leave a video specifically calling him out. And that video is also a great way to set up the story here, and it's done in a pretty entertaining way despite being exposition in universe. And you know what? Side note, as you can see, putting my little tangent sticker on there, but I'm not actually the kind of person who's typically annoyed by exposition dumps. I love learning new information, especially if it's world building stuff. So even if it's done in a quote unquote boring way, I don't really mind exposition being thrown in my face. The only thing is that it has to be done in a good enough way to where I'll actually remember what I'm being told. I feel that happens a lot in books. They'll say all the info you need to know, and then I just forget about it immediately. But yeah, all of that's besides the point. So let me go ahead and get back to the episode. So since I just spent some time talking about Sandy, let me go ahead and talk about SpongeBob and Patrick, as they're great here. This episode really exemplifies the tried and true dynamic between the two of them, where SpongeBob is hesitant to do something while Patrick convinces him to do said thing. This is a dynamic that doesn't usually fail, so it's always a welcome story beat. And when the two enter Sandy's tree dome, it was really fun to see their wonder at the snow, even though it does leave me with a lot of questions given the existence of snowball effect, or the episode I just reviewed, Christmas Who. Though I guess the snow and snowball effect is explained by a glacier drifting over Bikini Bottom, which is an unusual occurrence, so it's whatever. And as I always say, this is SpongeBob, so none of this even matters. Lastly, this episode is just hilarious, and every part of it is influenced by humor in some capacity. take the tension in this episode. We see the danger Sandy poses to SpongeBob and Patrick, and we spend much of the episode contending with that danger and the tension that arises because of it. And this tension is, of course, balanced out by humor, which is the only reason this tension is included in the first place. Hopefully, that's all explained well. But anyway, this leads to a lot of funny moments where SpongeBob and Patrick try not to wake Sandy up, eventually culminating in the scene where they get beat up, and again when they rip the fur off Sandy. And speaking of Patrick getting beat up, speaking of SpongeBob and Patrick getting beat up, I gotta spend some time here on because that whole part of the episode is absolutely hilarious. The back and forth about who's gonna be Dirty Dan, and then Sandy joining in by ripping Patrick's head off with another great visual face, by the way. It's all just amazing. And the ending of this episode is also fantastically horrible when Sandy finds out what SpongeBob and Patrick did. Shout out to Carolyn Lawrence there. She did a great job with Sandy's scream because you can just feel her horror. Really, just the voice actors in the show are top tier. How many times do I need to say it? But as you can see, I really like this episode, and I don't really have much to say about it other than that. It's just a good, solid, really super funny episode. And it's also quite iconic with those Dirty Dan jokes. And so it has its well-earned spot in my amazing tier, coming in with a score of 9.2 out of 10. Well, if the last episode was the good, then this one must be the bad. And that is indeed the case. Dumped is the first real dud of SpongeBob SquarePants. It simply ain't all that great. But there are some good moments in here, I will give it that, so let me go ahead and talk about it. Things start off pretty well in this episode, with SpongeBob and Gary playing tag all cute and stuff. Y'all know I love me some SpongeBob and Gary moments, that's all I have to say. So imagine my surprise and disappointment as the episode goes on. It doesn't really take long for Gary to start showing a preference towards Patrick, which to me is already eliciting a what the fuck, and a reaction of this is out of character. Well, as in character as these guys stay in this show at least. Dumped begins to lose me though, for real, when SpongeBob realizes that Gary isn't following him back home, and I got a number of problems with this. First off, it's unpleasant to watch SpongeBob get increasingly upset by the situation in this episode, but that's not even the worst part, because that would go to Patrick's reaction, which does not help at all, as he's high-key a little bit of a jerkwad, or, asshole. I already cursed once in this thing. I can do whatever I want. Patrick, do you even know how to take care of an animal? I'm getting Pet Sitter Pat flashbacks right now. Or, I guess, flash forwards. Anyway, Patrick does not act like a friend towards SpongeBob, at all in this episode, and it's infuriating. And another thing about character behavior in this episode, but I keep going back and forth as to whether Gary himself makes me mad, and I think I'm gonna settle on yes, but also no. Because, I would understand if they always made Gary stay more animalistic, but as shown in, Sleepy Time, he very clearly has a mind of his own, so why exactly are his actions being guided by a cookie? Especially when SpongeBob could easily get him a cookie if he just asked, because we've seen SpongeBob understand Gary before. I don't know. What gives? If anyone can answer that, that'd be great. And so this episode is extremely frustrating because of this, and like I said, it's not fun to watch SpongeBob be heartbroken the whole time. The way the episode spends its time outside of this isn't too bad, and it helps kind of, buoy my enjoyment a bit. The montage of all the new pets isn't too bad, and there's some fun stuff in there, like the Snailer line. But it isn't fun to see SpongeBob get mistreated by Larry and Rex either, but Jerry's not too bad, I guess. However, any bit of enjoyment I do get from this part is severely diminished once Patrick comes over and starts patronizing SpongeBob. By then, I'm seeing red, so I'm really not enjoying what I'm watching, and I'm ready to turn it off. But, because this episode does have a saving grace. Kind of. The very end of this episode saves Dumped for me, because it makes the episode almost kind of, but not really, worth watching. See, once Gary gets that damn cookie out of Patrick's pants, everything starts going my way because Gary abandons Patrick and goes by SpongeBob's side where he belongs. And then once SpongeBob and Gary leave Patrick in the dust, the catharsis here pleases me greatly. And Bill Fagerbaki's delivery on "I thought what we had was special" is likewise amazing and really sells the moment for me. And this is truly the only really great moment in this entire episode, which helps to balance out some of the episode's worst qualities. But please do not mistake this as me saying that I like this episode or that the ending absolves it, because that's not what I'm saying. Nothing changes the fact that Dumped is frustrating, out of character, and above all, not enjoyable for me. And what keeps this episode from being any lower than my mediocre tier, though, is that the very beginning of this episode is cute, and the very end of it is satisfying and funny. Everything in between, though, not the move. This episode should feel grateful because it's just a hair's breadth away from being in my barely tolerable tier. So, with that said, this episode is a first of its kind because I'm putting it down in my mediocre tier, where it comes in with a score of 5 out of 10. As always, just wanted to end with some closing thoughts of mine, and, this review was very fun, because even though I prefer to be positive, positive is, the thing I want to do, because this is my favorite show. Why do I want to talk about my favorite show? But it is fun every so often to just kind of, tear an episode a new asshole. Not that I really did for this episode, but I did just get finished writing a review for my least favorite episode of all time, and so, yeah. That was something. But really, it is fun to dabble a little bit into getting into things I don't like. But only because I'm positive so often, But yeah, and also just I really don't like Dumped. I really don't. I don't But yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention in these closing thoughts is that I've been working on adding closed captioning to my videos. I don't know if I'll go back and add it to the old ones, just because it is it is a lot, but I just noticed that the YouTube automatic subs are trash, so I'm okay, let me add the real ones. The reason it's so hard is I can't just import my script because I always go off script, so I have to go through and usually I just see what YouTube auto generates and then I just fix it. So I've been doing that for the last few videos, which is why maybe if you're on the computer you can see that it says CC now, because I've actually been doing that. So yeah, I don't know how many people use subtitles or not, but it's I feel this is something I should have been doing earlier, because I myself use subtitles for a lot of things, but I don't know. But I'm doing it now because I want to be as accessible as possible. So yeah, I think that should be about everything. I don't know. Sometimes I felt there's something else I wanted to say, but I think there's not. So I'm going to go ahead and end the review here, and I will see you guys next time.